Hey folks, today we're going to take a look at a game that is currently seeking funding on Kickstarter. That game is called Earth Asunder, and it's from Ascent Games. Now, if you like what you see throughout the rest of this preview video, I'm going to encourage you to go to the official Kickstarter project page, which you can do right now by following the link in the top corner of your screen, as well as down in the description section underneath this video. Those links will take you directly to the Kickstarter page where you can find out more information than I could possibly tell you here, and hopefully you will consider backing the project. Now, Earth Asunder is a competitive tactical miniature skirmish game. You and the other player control different factions fighting in a post-apocalyptic Earth. And it is Earth, but a lot has happened. There's been these dark rifts opened up, and all this dark, arcane, magical energy poured out into the world, rending everything asunder, hence the name of the game. Changing the face of the landscape and changing people themselves, giving some of them magical powers and things like that. But of course, it is still future Earth, which means that there is still technology. Some characters have guns and high technological, very advanced guns too, but at the same time they're fighting against people using swords and daggers and arcane spells and special abilities way beyond normal human comprehension. Things like that. Each player will have their faction. You'll fight off against each other. Each player has a summoner, like an immensely powerful human in this post-apocalyptic world, who can not only use very special powers, but can actually bring the units out onto the field, and that is your goal, is to take out the enemy summoner. Now, of course, it's a little more complicated than that, but not too much. But we're going to go ahead and take a quick look at how the game is played with a prototype version of the game. So do bear in mind that what you see here may change in the final version. Of course, since this is a miniature skirmish game, you can expect the final version of the game to have very, very high quality miniatures. The ones that you see here are just prototype miniatures, although, even for that, they're pretty high quality. But in any event, we will do that, take a look at that prototype, come back and discuss the game further. Earth Asunder is a competitive miniature skirmish game for 2 players. Each player controls a powerful summoner who will use rift nodes to summon warriors to fight by their side. The goal is to eliminate the enemy summoner before they eliminate yours. To set up the game, start by laying out the hex-based game board. Next to the board, make stocks of status effect markers, which will be placed underneath the miniatures in the game if special spells and abilities are used against your opponent or against you. One player will set up along each side of the board. Each player gets an army deck consisting of 10 cards, each belonging to a different faction, in this case the blue-tinged Dalren and the red-tinged Sinestra. You'll lay these cards out on your side of the field, and nearby you'll place their miniatures, which will represent each unit on the battlefield. Each card represents a different unit, and there are 3 different types of units. First, and most importantly, there is your summoner. This is the most powerful unit of your army and its linchpin, the means to bring more of your army onto the board, and the way in which either you are going to win the game by killing your enemy's summoner, or the way you're going to lose the game if they kill yours. Summoners have a unique stat in the top corner, which is their summoning pool, the maximum amount of summoned units they can bring onto the board at one time. They also have an epic level ability that no other unit has access to in its description box in bold type. The rest of the stats on the card are the same as for the other units, which are broken down into uniques, who can only be summoned once per game and are extremely powerful, and commons, who can be summoned multiple times. The 3 stats along the right side of each unit card are movement, which is the number of hexes that unit can move, power, which is the amount of damage it can inflict, and health, the amount of damage it can take before being destroyed. The description box will list the unit's abilities like Arcanist, Channel, Camouflage, etc., and also any arcane spells the unit may have like Curse or Meteor, Teleport, Heal, and Holy Shield. The back of the unit card will explain the details of your abilities and spells at length, including the cost, range, and potential upkeep costs each round. Give each player a set of 6-sided dice and decide randomly who will go first. Whoever goes second will place 1, 3, or 5 rift node pieces out on the board in the blue outlined hexes. One of these must always go in the center, and then 1 or 2 must be placed on each player's side of the board equally. Next, the first player will place the miniature for their summoner in one of the spaces of their choice along the first row of their edge of the board. They'll also place 3 to 5 obstacles wherever they like on their side of the board. The second player will then do the same thing, so that both summoners are on the field and up to 10 obstacles are placed. Then, begin the game with the first player's turn. Every turn is broken down into phases. First is upkeep. Any continuous effects you were previously afflicted with, whether negative or positive, will resolve first. You will gain a flat 6 arcane power, plus 2 for every arcane unit who is camped out near a rift node, with the second player gaining an additional 2, but only on the first turn. The second phase is actions. You can activate every unit you currently have on the board one at a time, fully completing their activation before moving on to the next unit. Unique and common units may only activate once. They will move first, then use either an attack, an ability, or a spell. Movement is hex to hex, and you can move a number of hexes equal to your movement rating. However, you cannot move through spaces with other units, rift nodes, or obstacles unless that unit has the flying ability. And if they begin next to or move into an enemy adjacent hex, their movement is halved, rounded down. When they finish moving, the unit miniature can face in any of the 6 directions. But after the movement, they can attack, cast a spell, or utilize an ability, which will then end that unit's activation. Unless otherwise stated, all attacks are melee and can be performed against any one target in the 3 hexes that unit is facing, dealing their power rating in damage. An enemy that survives the attack, however, can retaliate with their own standard power attack, if they're facing in your direction. When an enemy's health is reduced to 0, their miniature is removed from the battlefield. If they were a common unit, they can be resummoned later. Some standard attacks are ranged, as are spells and some abilities. To use these, you must have line of sight, and if you try to use a ranged attack after moving, you'll take a damage penalty of 1 unless you have a special ability called Quick Draw. Line of sight can be blocked by obstacles or other units. Some powerful units have area of effect attacks that can potentially have multiple targets. Spells usually do some sort of damage or debilitating effect to your enemies, or defensive or healing effects to your allies. Some extremely powerful spells, as I mentioned, can have multiple targets, or they can destroy targets outright. Abilities tend to give you added advantage on the battlefield, whether it's defensive effects, extra mobility, or potential added damage. Summoners function a bit differently than your other units. They can essentially activate and reactivate as many times as you are willing to have them do so in one turn, or until you run out of resources. They can move multiple times and take multiple actions, although they can only make one physical attack per turn. Also, while they can cast multiple spells, you have a limited pool of arcane power to pull from each turn. Fortunately, only the summoner must spend arcane power. Common and unique units have their own arcane power at the cost of only being able to potentially use one spell per turn. That same arcane must also be used to summon units, which is of course the summoner's unique ability. By spending an amount of arcane equal to the indicated amount on the top of the unique or common unit, you can summon a unit onto the field in an unobstructed hex adjacent to the summoner. When all of your units have activated and completed their actions, play passes to the next player, who will take their turn in a similar fashion. Play will continue like this until one player is finally able to overwhelm and destroy the enemy's summoner. There is much more to Earth Asunder to come, including more cards for each faction, new factions, and even mercenary units any factions can make use of. But for now, that is Earth Asunder. I think that the core mission statement of Earth Asunder is not just to be another tactical miniature skirmish game, however many more adjectives I can throw out there, in a very crowded landscape of those types of games. It wants to set itself apart by being a game that is very entry-level friendly and casual friendly, but without sacrificing all of the strategy and deeper gameplay that a miniature skirmish player would want. It can be very daunting to get into these types of games, especially when you're talking about games that have a very long history and tons of different things and pieces and different ways to play the game, and getting the not only the right pieces but the terrain and all that type of stuff. what's going on with Earth Asunder is that you can get the starter box and just immediately have 2 complete factions to play with together with the board, with the terrain pieces. And again, and I want to make this very clear, in the final version, not only going to have high quality versions of the miniatures that I showed for the units in this with the prototype version, but also even the rift nodes and the obstacles will have their own miniatures too. And that's very important because again, this is a complete game that you're buying. You don't have to go piecemeal and get different things and spend a fortune to do so. But because of the nature of the game, it is highly customizable if you want to go that far. There will be more factions to get. There will be, with different units, different summoners, their own special abilities, more types of different other pieces to add to the game. So just to keep that in mind, it's highly customizable and highly expandable. But again, gameplay-wise, you're not sacrificing ease of access in order to do that. Very directly, it's very straightforward. You have your units, you have your summoner, that's the most important thing, most important unit. They just can bring out more. Every unit can be activated, unit/character, and can move and can activate something, whether it's an attack, just a normal attack, or their ranged attack, or if they can do so, or a spell or an ability. They do that one thing and they're done. The summoner can do a bit more because they are more powerful and can activate multiple times potentially, and they have their own arcane power pool. But still, that basic setup: move, take an action, try to go for your opponent's summoner. But then within that simple premise, you have tons of different abilities, tons of different spells. The summoners have their own epic level abilities that no other unit has. You have your unique units, which can only be used once, but again are much, much, much more powerful than your commons, and so can be used, if you use them wisely, they can turn the tide of battle for you, even if they can't do quite as much as your summoner does. So again, lots and lots of options, lots of customizable things potentially, but you still have that core gameplay, which, while very, very, very young and very new people might have some trouble with, the point is that people who want to get into miniature skirmish games, this is a point of entry for them. This is a way for them to experience that world and also to, get not just the basics, but if they want to pursue it further, this can not just be a point of entry, but also be a lifestyle game of their own because of how much more stuff you can get for it. That's entirely up to you, and I think that is what they're going for here, is to just give you that option to have this array of different things you can do with it if you want to go that far. And for both casual gamers and for experienced gamers, you're going to find something here to sink your teeth into, and casual gamers could become experienced gamers just by playing Earth Asunder. And you add on to that all the different other trappings of it, which is the sci-fi theme, but sci-fi mixed with fantasy, which I still think is underused. You don't see that too often outside of things like Shadowrun. The high quality miniatures, the high quality artwork on all of the unit cards as well to bring you into the world. There's even story bits that you can read in the instruction booklet, things like that to really drag you into it. So if any of that sounds like it appeals to you or to someone you know in your gaming group or family or so on and so forth, you don't have to take my word for any of this. You can go to the official Kickstarter project page and find out more information than I could possibly tell you here. Do that by following the link in the top corner of your screen, as well as down in the description section underneath this video. That is Earth Asunder from SN Games. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, for supporting our sponsors. Take care.